Hello, my kindred friends. This is Christian from the Kindred Stamps design team. And today we're going to be making a card that smashes up quite a few different products. First, we're going to be using Born to be Brave. We'll be using the Marine and the helicopter, and then one sentiment from this stamp set. As you can see, I made some masks, so you know we'll be doing some masking. Next up, I pulled out the cursive curses. And really, it's just for utilizing this one sentiment with a banner that I had cut from the Card Basic dies. Talking about the Card Basic die set, I utilized quite a few different little things from this packet. First up, I used a little banner die. Then I cut out multiple white stars in the two sizes medium and small. Then from metallic gold shiny cardstock and red cardstock, I cut out the circles. We then will be using the stitch number die set. And I did some pre-die cutting here as well and cut out 21 in a metallic gold finished paper. I will also be using the grass and clouds stencils, and I will be using those negative cutouts from this image. A piece of 5x7 smooth white cardstock will be the base for the front of our card. And then finally, we'll be using the Desert Scene Layering Stencil. We'll be using the positives and the negatives. I wasn't quite sure which image I was going to use, so I couldn't tell you exactly at this moment. The final prep that I have is a 5x7 piece of cardstock that's just a smidgen shy on the 5-inch side, and I'll explain that later. Then I have a piece of 2.5 by 1-inch piece of cardstock in that same blue card. I know that was a lot of stuff that we're using, but thinking outside the box and trying to combine stamp sets and dies is a great way for you to expand what you currently have and come up with some great ideas for a card. This card is going to be a 5x7 card that has an interactive center that pops up when we open the card itself. So we are going to start with the outside of the card. So I took that 5x7 smooth white cardstock and placed it into my MISTI. I will be placing the Marine and the helicopter onto the card. Knowing that I'm going to have a horizon line that will have some type of a mountainscape or pillars or something, because I'm not sure what I'm doing at this point, I want to make sure that I have enough space to give the illusion that my character, my little Marine, is in the front of the card and my helicopter is going to be in the distance in the sky. To confirm I have enough space for the placement of my sentiment, I do place the Whiskey Tango Foxtrot into the corner just to make sure that I have enough space. The images were stamped in alcohol-safe ink since I will be utilizing my Olo markers to color both the Marine and the helicopter once I have my scene designed. With the magic of editing, the cleanup fairy came through and cleaned off my desk, and we now can start playing with our background. I will be utilizing some masking paper and placing that over the top of both of my Marine and the helicopter. This will allow me to ink blend my background on this panel. So while I struggle a little bit here trying to get the masking paper off the back of the masks, big fingers, little paper, they get in fights all the time. I kind of want to talk a little bit about masking itself. I know previously I did a video where we talked about masking and how you can utilize this in your card design so that you can have a single layer card or add color behind your images. The key to masking and cutting out your image is fussy cutting, and fussy cutting right on that line. And not being afraid to cut a section off so that you can get the innards. So for example, on the helicopter, I just cut off one of the legs right along the side because it will lay back down together, just so I can get inside and get that base out and be able to have the illusion that the helicopter is actually in the sky. There's color behind it, and it gives it the fluidity of the scene. With these masks now in place, I need to make my horizon line. For that, I just cut down another piece of masking paper to fit across the base, allowing the Marine to be in the front and then have my horizon line in the back. Until now, my card looks like I have a floating head and a helicopter. It looks a little wonky, but we're going to start building our background now. I am just going to do the background on my glass mat for now because I'm going to be putting down multiple stencils and I didn't feel like digging out my sticky mat. It'll come out later when I get frustrated. So first up, we're going to add those pillars in the background. I'm going to have them go across that horizon line. I didn't want a lot of depth because I wanted to give the illusion that they were in the distance. So I didn't make them very tall over that horizon line. And I just tape that down with some low tack tape just to keep it so it doesn't go anywhere on me. You will notice this stencil does not go all the way across my board. Oh no, what to do? You can extend your stencils as well. I am placing down just a little bit of a temporary adhesive on this side as a mask so that I can keep the level that I would like my pillars to be. When I do my ink blending, it is okay if some of that light blue ink that I put in the sky shows there because I will be covering this up with some of the gray ink when we come in to stencil those pillars themselves. The cloud negatives are going to be placed into the corners of the card base so that they look like they are coming in to the image itself. With the blue ink, I ink blend softly and unevenly on purpose. I wanted to give the illusion of the variance inside the sky when you look at the sky. It's not always just a solid color. There's variations in it. There's lighter sections of blue and brighter sections of blue. So you'd want to have that depth throughout. So that's intentional. When satisfied, I removed my temporary tape as well as my mask and shifted my stencil negative over to the other side. This allows me to extend my image. You can see in the background in some sections it's very faint, in other sections it's a lot darker and a lot crisper. You can tell that outline is there and what that it looks like. This just gives me the cues for lining up the negatives to my stencil. After a little cleanup, it was going to be time to start stenciling the cliffs in themselves. A simple stencil is a wondrous tool. You can do multiple different applications of your ink with this. You could just do one light color of ink completely on it, adding no texture. This gives the illusion in the background that something there. I want to give it some texture, some depth, and that's easily made by using different tools within your stash. If you do not have a small blending brush or a bending brush that has a firm tip that you would be able to do some edging in, you can utilize a Q-tip. It works just as well. Doing this, you're giving that depth to that image and bumping up that simple stencil and changing the look and the design of your card. With the top of the card completed, I did remove my mask. I just gently peeled this off, making sure I would not take off the mask of the marine at the same time. Depending on how heavy-handed you are, the ink that you are now going to be covering may impede the stickiness of the masking paper. I did a very light application with dye inks, so they dry pretty fast and absorb into that paper pretty fast. So I didn't have to worry about my mask coming off of my scene at this point. It was now time to fill in the ground. I pulled out a medium-sized blending brush and started to blend, and then thought, this is going to take me forever. Do you need to have every size blending brush underneath the sun? No. Does it make your life a lot easier by having tools that work and can expedite your ink blending and coloring? 100%. By transitioning over to the large blending brush, I was able to apply color a lot faster. Each of us has our own way of ink blending. Me, I'm a start off the paper on the edge where I can be darker and pull it into the center or to that area that I am going to be having as my highlight. In this instance, you can see where I started on the paper really, really far off and then started bringing that color in. This allows me to increase my intensity and to get a full coverage of that ink without having those big blotchy areas. You can see I start to get a little heavier handed when I do this, and that is to increase that intensity once I have that base line down, that base layer of color that is going to smooth out as it dries. I will bring in that medium-sized brush again to enhance the coloring on the horizon line so that in the end my card has deepness on the sides, the bottom, and then the horizon line. There is a little more lightness in the center of the card on the opposite side of my marine to just give that illusion of texture and depth and just interest itself. The cleanup fairy came along and cleaned up my desk again, which was amazing. So should get one of these people. They're great. It was finally my favorite part of making a mask card is removing the masks and seeing what is underneath the images themselves. When removing your masks, if you plan on trying to save a mask for another use, for example, I would like to save the mask for my helicopter, and it started to peel up a little bit. So I just slowly remove it, making sure that I am not taking any parts of anything that I don't want to have. I store my masks on the back of my stamp set acetate so that I always have them in the pinch so I don't have to sit and cut them out all over again another time. I absolutely love masking. It gives you an opportunity to really add layer and dimension without bulk on the card. This card itself is going to have quite a bit of bulk because of the interactive pieces in the inside, and I have foam tape, and I know I am hand delivering this. If I were not hand delivering this, I would have used some different processes when I put it together. As you can see, I did start to do my coloring with my Olo markers. During this time, I will put all of the marker colors that were used on the little post-it note so that you can see it. When I am doing my coloring, I like to keep the lids near my markers so that they don't dry out, depending on how many times I will be using them. My process for coloring is typically always the same. I will start with the lightest colors and then move out to my darkest colors and then bringing in red last because I tend to drag colors into other colors because I get impatient and I try to go a little bit faster than I should, and then I have color bleed. So I always go in my lightest to my darkest color tones and brightest and most intense tones. And for some reason, I always do the face first. I think because it's getting that edge off, like, ooh, what if I make a mistake? Well, I can always put a new face on it if I make a mistake. So it's a nice light tone for my Marine. This is going to one of my favorite Marines who just happens to be my godchild. And I made it in his likeness. I know that coloring can be intimidating, especially when you've put so much work into the card and you're afraid that if I go out of the lines, this could happen and then I lost everything I worked on. Or if I did this, then that. You don't know if that's going to happen unless you try. So many times I think we psych ourselves out of not taking that chance and playing with something or trying a new technique because we're afraid that we're going to mess it up. Well, 100%, the first couple times you do it, you are going to mess it up. That's called learning. You didn't learn to ride a bike in one setting. Well, maybe if you're like awesome and have great balance, not this chick. I am the most uncoordinated person out there. You learn from your mistakes and you learn from practice what works and what doesn't work. So many times when we are crafting, we follow human nature and we compare ourselves to others. We should not be comparing ourselves to anyone else. You are doing your best and it is amazing. Just remember that when you try a new technique, when you try coloring something for the first time, when you take the leap and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to ink up the stamp that hasn't had ink on it because I'm a collector, not an actual card maker. I know you're out there. I'm with you. We'll talk about that in a different video. Okay, friends, I'll stop rambling here and giving you a little cheerleader pep talk. I'll throw on some music so you can finish watching the rest of the coloring. And I'll see you back here in about 2 minutes. And welcome back. I know that I'm not completely done coloring yet, but I just wanted to give you a little insight of what I am doing. I am adding a drop shadow underneath my marine so he is not just floating there on this tarmac. Originally, I was planning on having this card be a full panel 5x7 with my sentiment heat embossed onto the ink panel to make it truly less dimensional. So I tested the panel by placing a little bit of embossing powder on it to see if it stuck to the panel itself, signifying that the ink was still wet. Knowing that my panel was dry, I got ready to put my sentiment onto the front of the panel. And it just didn't jive with me when I started to place it together. I felt like it was getting lost in the sea of gray. Then I thought, is my card too big? Is ex- the card too expansive? So I started thinking about this and playing with it. I pulled out an A7 die and brought it down a little bit to see, will that work? I did like the smaller panel. I liked the way that it framed it. And there's Oscar again. Sorry about that. So it was just my sentiment that I had to rethink. I decided that my sentiment needed to be popped up on the card and needed to have a border around it. The sentiment was stamped in pigment ink. The cardstock was prepped with an anti-static tool, and then clear embossing powder was placed over the sentiment itself so that I could have that shiny look that I was going for. Because my ink pad was really juicy, I lost the drop shadow that you see on the stamp itself, but I was okay with that. I then stamped your on the little flag in the same pigment ink. I am going to breeze through the assembly of the front panel. A piece of navy cardstock was adhered to the 5x7 card base. The inked image was die cut out and applied with foam to the card base, and then the Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, which now has a red border, was added to the front panel with some foam tape. Now we're going to turn our attention to the inside of the card. We're going to focus on the pop-up element first. The gold foiled cardstock will be the mat, and the red circle will be the front panel. That will be just glued together and set aside to dry. The Your tag will be adhered to the panel as well, flush with the left-hand side as best as I can. I cannot put a square on a circle, but we're going to try. The numbers 21 will also be adhered. This is my reminder to you. If you are using your magnetic bars or your magnets to hold down wet stuff, make sure you clean them every once in a while because if they're sticky, they'll just pull everything back off again. As you see, I learned that lesson. And finally, 3 stars will be placed around this pop-up element. It was time now to make that mechanism. Taking that 2.5 inch by 1 inch piece of cardstock, I scored at each 1/2 inch mark. So at the 1/2 inch, the 1 inch, the 1.5 inch, the 2 inch, all received a score. These will then be folded as a mountain fold on each and every one of the score lines to give it the flexibility to bend and fold into a square. Liquid adhesive will be placed on one tab and folded upon itself. While the mechanism dried, it was time to adhere that piece of 5x7 navy cardstock that was trimmed just a wee bit shorter, just a little bit on that 5 inch side, so that when I adhere this, it fits perfectly on the side of the bump from the score inside my card. The die cut stars were then glued to this navy panel in a random pattern. The points that hung off the sides of the card were then trimmed and adhered back onto the panel to give it a more robust feel. I did not place stars behind where the mechanism will fall because I didn't need that added bulk to the card and no one would see them anyway. It's finally time to put that pop-up mechanism into the card. I use liquid glue for this. Liquid glue has a stronger bond than many of our tapes. And depending on the humidity in the area in which you live or the area that you are sending this card to, that adhesive may not stick. To assemble this pop-up mechanism, the square will be smushed flat. Glue is only going to be placed on one side of the square. When lining up the pop-up mechanism, make sure you do not go over the bump from your score line of your card base itself. This will cause your card to open properly. As you can see a square. We are now going to attach the bottom of the square to the inside panel of our card. Again, we will put a little liquid adhesive on just that panel and sandwich it close. I do hold this for a hot second because you want the glue to actually set before you start tinkering with it. And you will see here momentarily that I'm impatient and I wanted to tinker with it and then it popped up. So don't be me, just have a little patience, let it dry for a hot second. We are now ready to actually put the pop-up into the card. When we open up our card base, we are going to see that we have a little shelf that we are able to put our element on. We will be placing our pop-up element onto the front of that square. This also was adhered with a liquid glue and allowed to dry. Making this style pop-up is unlimited in the amount of items that you can make, as long as you're staying within the size of the card itself. You can have so many simple pop-ups without even needing any special dies to achieve it. Next was the fun part, testing it over and over again, making sure that I didn't have any adhesive that went outside the parameters and anything was sticking, and that my card opened and closed the way that I wanted. I did add some white gel pen highlights to the images to give them a little spunk themselves. And just like that, we have a 21st birthday card for my favorite Marine. We were able to pull in so many different sets and made an interactive card with limited dies. How exciting is that? I cannot wait to see what you make using this pop-up mechanism in one of your cards. Please share in our Facebook page so that we're able to see what you do. I would like to thank you very much for your time today. I know this was a little bit longer video than I normally do for you, but I hope you did get some tips and tricks along the way. Until next time, my friends, thank you very much, and I will see you in our Facebook group.